Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to show you all the code that I used to use the data from the last video and create our tables. So every time we insert a row into the subject table, we'll either have to relate it to a parent subject, or we just run a procedure and boom, all of our tables are created. Realm, class, family type, and base. Realm, class, family type, and relationship. Whatever we need. So hope you enjoy, and I will see you soon. All right, so I'm going to work a little backwards. I'm going to show you the code for the dataset subject dataset create all, and then I'll show you the actual procedure. So the create all takes in a subject ID. And with the subject ID, it gets all the subject information and the abbreviation for that type ID. Now, I went ahead and began a transaction because I want to make sure that all of this works or none of it works. First, I'm going to call the procedure that I will show you next with realm. And if it succeeds, we'll insert a realm table in case it doesn't exist. And I will do it again for class, and again for family, and again for type, and once more for base. Very simple. Commit it. Right now we're going to print it because we don't have any sort of error handling and reporting right now, but we will in the future. So very simple code, just making sure we pass in a subject ID, get some information, and pass everything forward. So for the actual create single, to use all the data that we entered in the last video, there's a lot of information I needed. Subject type information, database information, data point information, data point type, subject name, data point list to actually build the table, some create scripts, both file group scripts to figure out where the cluster goes and where the non-cluster goes. And then we had some additional information that we needed to create based on the data coming in. We need to make sure that, hey, if this is a primary key, we have to capture it for the index, the relationship for the subject to subject that I was talking about at the end of the video, our only relationship that we needed. And that relationship information, what's the parent, all the information that we need to build that. So for the initialization, there are two primary data point types that we are looking for. One of them is the UDT foreign key parent, and one of them is the primary key. We want to make sure that when we're creating a table, we know what's the primary key and if there is one for the parent. Now our create table script is very simple. If it doesn't exist, we're going to go ahead and create it. We're going to use the database, and we will compile the dataset name, create that dataset name, inject the data point list, dataset name for the primary key, because you don't need any additional naming information on there. This is why we have the data point name for primary key, so we make sure that it's in here. And then we have our non-clustered on the file group index, and the rest of our table on the cluster. And actually at the end of this, I'll show you an easy script I wrote, and I'll show you the tables that it created because of that. But continuing, for the subject ID, we're going to figure out where it's supposed to be. And if the dataset type name coming in is base, that last item in the previous procedure, we need to make sure that we figure out what family it is, because that's going to be the dataset type name. That's why I call it adjusted, that we actually want. So we still want to type this as base, but we probably need to look at our CFT, event shared attribute, two relationship, one relationship, whatever it may be, because that base is pretty unique, but the realm class family type is not. Just getting database name for the database ID. And here's where I started to use the abstract containers that we had created. So this is the table container where we're using the adjusted value. So it will be our CFT or it will be realm, class, family, type, or it will be, you know, to relationship, whatever it may be. We need the relationship type ID for the subject to subject, the new relationship that we had created. And then we're going to go check the relationship table itself to figure out, hey, is there a parent? Because if there's not a parent, or if there is a parent, we want to make sure that we grab that subject type information, because if the parent does not have ref as its 3-letter abbreviation, we want to make sure that we accurately create everything around it. If the dataset type name is not a realm, class, family, or type, then we are going to overload the current dataset's 3-part name identifier, or 3-part family, or 3-part type identifier with whatever is stored, or else it's going to be ref, because our realm, class, family, type will always be reference data. I'm initializing an empty data point list, and then I'm just cursoring through the data point list, or the data point table, where this is our abstract container that we had called just above a little bit right here, because that's going to give us back tokenized data points and the data point type ID, which is a very important piece. So as we're going through each data point, there are a couple things that we want to do. We're going to clear the name out, and then we're going to get the key name for the data point type ID, because if it's unassigned, we're not going to add it. We can't add it. We don't know what to assign it to. We don't know if it's UDT, generic text, or whatever. So we're just going to skip it. This allows us to have bogus information yet not interrupt our day-to-day. Though we have a little weird rule where if this data point type key name is not unassigned and we get it back and it's a parent ID, but no parent was defined for the subject, we are going to skip it. So if this is a parent foreign key and the subject ID is not null, meaning we do, or it's just not a foreign key parent, we can actually start concatenating the list. So we're going to concatenate the empty data point list, which won't be empty any longer, with the name, space, data type, space, and if it's a primary key, we want to make sure we add our identity on top of that. And finally, the comma. It's really cool. We don't have to trim the trailing comma because we're going to add the cluster. We have the cluster code inside of the tokenized SQL script. And lastly, just an outside check. If the data point type ID is the primary key, we're going to set that data point type or data point name primary key to the current data point name for that non-clustered primary key. I had to create a new function. Let's see. Very similar to the file group one that we created. It's just a little different up top. Instead of the dataset ID and definition, I gave it a subject and dataset type key name because I want to make sure that if it's base, that we get the correct file group, whether it's relationship or not, or else we're on the reference data point. And all of this is basically the same code down from here down. It's just the information that we needed at the top changed a little bit because we get our database ID from subject instead. Very, very light changes to an existing function that I just made into a new function. So I had to get the cluster and I passed it in the faux kind of definition, even though there's no definition here, which allows me to actually pass in primary key. And because it's not clustered, because it's not unique or anything, it just fails out and says, well, you have to go on index, which is actually exactly what we want. So that works for us. The replacement scripts I split into two pieces just because when these get too long, it becomes unreadable. We are replacing that create script. We're replacing the dataset name, data point list, primary key, file group index, file group cluster, database name. And I take a second pass with all the tokenized information. Subject name, parent abbreviation, parent name, subject family abbreviation, which is a misspelling. In my original video, I should have said subject type, but You know, it's there, I will use it, and I'll add it to the tech debt. So we should probably update the abstract data points to make sure that this is type. Come back in here and change this to type. And then I execute it. So very, very easy. I mean, a lot of code, but really not much going on. And I will take all these comments out and I will paste them in the description so you have something to look at and work with. But for creating a subject, and let me go down to my system database. And we have message with no parent. I was able to create this message realm class family type. I was able to put indexes on them, but I realized that I did not do foreign keys yet, so that will be the next video, is just making sure all our tables have foreign keys. But what this did is this simple function, or this procedure, created all my tables. So when my tables were done, I said, you know, go get all of my tables. So it was a realm class family type and base table. Now it iterated through all of our hard work. Populate the data point, add the defaults to it, make sure your indexers are on there, create the base view, create the rest of the views. And I even forgot to put the triggers in here, but that's, you know, this much code is what is responsible for us wanting to go into, or what allows us to go into this table. Oops. Say, you know, I have a message. I don't know of another piece that I might have. If I think really hard, I don't really know. Let's just do this just because. Let's do token. So I create a token. It's 11. I can come back to my subject, say it's 11, and this is token. Should be able to run it. Boom, it's done. Refresh. Got my token. Got my constraints. Still no foreign keys. Got my indexes. Refresh views. Go all the way down, and I got my views. Really cool piece. Highlight of 000. Still got a little bit more to do in the system before we can branch out, but we're kind of wrapping up. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and remember, like this video and YouTube will recommend it to other users in our industry, and subscribe to support me. Thank you again, and I will see you next time.